Hey guys, Meticulous Maynard here. So, in this episode, we're going to focus on getting the interior back in on Tiabeanie so that we get just that much closer to her being a running and driving car. This is mostly going to just entail doing some menial, like tidying up a wiring. There's a bunch of things that, have been wrong with the wiring, lights that don't work and such. That I just haven't gotten to because why take the interior apart to fix these issues? But the interior's apart, so now's the time to fix these issues. The big one of all of these is the sound system, actually. And even though this car came with the premium sound system, it's all going in the bin because it's getting a much better sound system. So let's dive into this and figure out exactly what's in store for us today. Alright, so one of my miscellaneous wiring tasks to take care of on this car before I get the interior back together is working on the window motors. Both sides on the front, the window motors just move super slow, and when it's cold out, the driver's side, it's kind of a dice gamble as to whether it even moves at all. So I opted to just replace both window motors, get that all taken care of, and as a quick flat rate trick for you guys out there who are curious about doing the same, specifically only replace the motors, not the entire regulator, because then you don't have to worry about calibrating windows or any of that stuff. It's just as simple as pulling the motor out, swapping the new one in, and plugging it in. If you guys are curious, just Google, YouTube, whatever, such and such Subaru whatever window motor replacement, and look for the ones that specifically talk about replacing the motors as opposed to the entire regulator. Saves you a lot of time. Except, of course, when you run into this problem. Push down. Wait. Down. How about up? You gotta be fucking kidding me. So I gotta go into this connector here, and it's impossible to see without the light, but I need to swap polarity on this connector because whoever wired up that motor wired it up backwards. Thanks. Okay, so now that I've properly crossed the streams, put the light there. Alright, window directions. Down, up. Isn't it funny when it works like it's supposed to? So while we're on the topic of doing interior electronics on the car, while everything's apart, I've known that the backlight on this little display here for the automatic selection has been burned out since I bought the car. And this was something that the previous owner had disclosed to me. I knew going into it. But I figure, let's actually take a look at what's going on and replace this bulb. So I'm going to just pop this cover off real quick, and maybe that'll give us access to our bulb. Maybe over here and here. There we go. Pull that. Got this bulb. Oh, I guess just quarter turns on out. Well, we might as well take that off while we're in here, and we can actually take a look. So this is the little bulb that goes to it, and we got the wires going back here, and hang on a sec. What on earth? Can you guys see that? Oops. Oh, motive. That's funky. That was just literally down there. I wonder how long that's been there. That's kind of crazy. I don't even know. Is that like the nameplate off of a toolbox or something? I think that center hole says that it was kind of a plate. It's got this ridge here to rest on something. Weird. Well, Tiabeanie's giving me little souvenirs, I guess. I'll put that over there for now. Anyhow, so this wire curls back. And it does look like it goes back to this harness. So that's kind of problematic, because if this is burned out, does the bulb twist out or something? Man, I'm like a bull in a china shop here. I guess that's what happens when you try to take the bulb out with pliers. So yeah, we're gonna replace that with an LED, I'm thinking. Well, son of a bitch, why would I need to 3D print anything when I can just use the original component? So I figured out, if you just kind of push the pins in, and you see that barb there? Yeah, that's all that's holding this pin in. So I just depinned it, and now if we take an LED and we grab our piece here, like so, and voila. All I gotta do is just throw a little bit of epoxy or something on that LED, and it'll be right in place. And I'm using the original little locking tabs, so I can just put it back on to the cover just the way it came off. That's slick. So I yanked off my door speaker, and one of the problems I'd been noticing with my car was that this particular speaker had a lot of buzzing to it, and I think I figured out why. You hear that? That's the coil scraping on the inside. And also, if you look, the insulator is completely separated here. So this door cone is long since gone. So to replace this sad, old, worn out cone here, I've decided to go a little spendy and get a real good sound system going on. These are Polk DBs. They're really, really high quality component speakers. And component being that they have a separate woofer cone and a tweeter cone, which is actually how the setup is on the Forester, where it had a door speaker and a tweeter. This one's nice because it comes with a crossover, so you don't have to worry about getting them set up from your amplifier going to the speakers. You can run just one speaker wire per side, and then the crossover will handle splitting things between the woofer and the tweeter. So these look like they're almost going to be an exact bolt up here. I'm upgrading from, that is the stock original, it's the premium sound system, but it's still a dated head unit that doesn't even have Bluetooth or anything like that. So I'm going to get an Android capable one so I can do Android CarPlay with my phone. So I'll need to pull that out in a minute, but I'm trying to focus on doing all the wiring while I have everything apart here. And so with that head unit, I'm then going to run to 2 different amplifiers. Primarily under the passenger seat will be a 4-channel amp. It's, if I remember correctly, it's like a 1600 watt. That'll be putting down there, and it runs 4-channel RMS of like 200 watts or something at 4 ohms. So it'll be plenty powerful for the nice speakers I have, which are 100 RMS, 300 peak. And then on the driver's side, I have the monoblock that I'm going to be putting in. That's going to be a 2000 watt, powering the 10-inch I have back there to 750 watts. I think that's 750 peak. So it'll be plenty for the interior of this car. It's going to sound better than it ever has, especially with that door cone the way it was over there. So basically, it's been tedious, so I haven't really filmed too much of this, especially feeding it through the door harnesses. I found has been super difficult, but a nice trick that I learned from an old audio installer is you take the door speaker wire that you're pulling. So in this case, there were wires going to the door cone and to the tweeter up here, and I have no need for them to be in the door now that I'm running 16 gauge high quality speaker wire. So you snip the end at the pigtail. I left it a little longer just so that I could reconnect it if I made a mistake or something. And then you tie a knot on the end, wrap it up in tape, and use it as my stake to just pull it through. It works most of the time. Sometimes the tape slips off, but it was my trick for getting all of those in. And then from there, I kind of snaked it in along the door harness, and then it goes down the main interior harness here, and underneath there's a cross harness that goes from this side to the transmission tunnel, and it goes underneath all of this. So that's where I snake these wires through until I can pull them out. And it's the same on the other side, except rather than those speaker wires, it's this 8-gauge speaker wire, so it's much beefier than the other stuff. Haven't run the driver's side yet, ignore that one. But really the big elephant in the room here, because once I get stuff sorted in the back, I can get the back seat back in here. I want to figure out how to get that sub mounted in the hole back there. So let's go take a look at that. So I just threw it in the cavity that the stock subwoofer came in real quick. And really all that's going on is I just stuck it on by its magnet, and there's a frame member below that the magnet's resting on. So I can actually kind of mock it up, and you can pretty much see it's sitting maybe like a 1/4 inch back from the sheet metal, which is perfect, because what I can do is make a new panel that goes in here, make a cutout for the 8-inch, and then it'll have about an 1/4 inch clearance behind it. And if I do run into any problems with clearance in general, I could always take a spacer and push it back further out. So let's head over to the welding bench and get that bracket figured out. So I've done some laying out here, and I think I'm pretty happy with where that center is. I think it'll be favoring the top edge of the sheet metal a little bit, but seeing how close my outer line is, you can't even see it there. Yeah, it's hard to see again with the surface rust and everything, but it does look like I have some pretty good clearance around this, but the only way I'm really going to be able to know that is if I cut this out real quick, and then we'll fit it up in the car before I start cutting anything out. I'm going to throw this on the bandsaw, and ain't that better? Alright, rough cut for the time being. There are a couple of gross areas that I'm going to need to clean up here and there around it, but there's no avoiding that when you cut something out quickly on the bandsaw. I can still see my pie chart here showing me where my my center point is for the speaker. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take this, mock it up on the car, and see how I feel about that position compared to how it is in the body opening. Because obviously if I'm too high up in there, the magnet might contact the body, or I might hit the outer flange on the body, because you can see how far in these screws come. So I brought this piece into work. We've got a plasma cutter here, so I figure I'll use that, make my life easy for cutting out the interior for the subwoofer. So what I've done is I've actually taken this piece of angle iron here and made a pivot at the exact center, and then drilled a hole out that's exactly where my scribed line is for the cutout. And then I made a little starter here. That way I'm not trying to pierce through the metal with a plasma cutter. I already have a hole to start with. So I'll just take the torch, go in, put it in the hole, trace it around, and come back to start. And it'll kind of drop out but catch on the two edges so it won't fall all the way out. So unfortunately it ended up warping a little bit, but I think once I put the subwoofer on it, that'll help. And I may also tag in a little piece of angle on the bottom or something, just to kind of strengthen the whole thing. So that should help with some of this warpage that I'm seeing here. But that hole is now cut out, and it pretty much went straight to the line. I may have to take a grinder to it a little bit and clean it up here or there. But the nice thing about using the little protractor setup, I guess you could refer to that as, is that it does create a pretty consistent cut, especially when it's running smoothly like through there. When it kind of gets hung up a little bit, you get more of like that effect going on, but not too bad. And again, I can take a die grinder or something and really clean up this hole from here. Okay, so now that I have the cutout established in this panel, I was able to drill all the holes around for the sub, and currently I've only got it in the 4 corners here. I don't have it in the 45-degree positions quite yet, just because I'm mocking stuff up. But I mean, that fits in there pretty damn nicely, if I say so myself. And I was actually going to add like a little bit of ribbing on the underside, because it's hard to see now that I've got it in place, but when I plasma cut the piece, it kind of folded a little bit like a Pringle, in the sense that it had a compound angle going one way, and a compound angle going like 90 degrees opposed, so it was kind of funky like that. But when I started to bolt up the piece to the subwoofer itself, it actually sat kind of flat. So now I'm wondering if I even need that, and maybe I just put like a little hole here, zip tie Christmas tree kind of things that goes into holes to hold the speaker wire there, so it doesn't flex or move around any much when it's, you know, bumping. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'll need to kind of figure out how the carpet now overlays over that. And the other thing I got to do is throw probably speed nuts or something on the piece just to kind of serve as nuts, because currently I have a through bolted, but it wasn't going particularly well, and I don't think it had anything to do with my hole positions. I just think it had to do with, like, I have a whole bunch of mixed hardware and a thing that I thought was all like 1032. And it's like 1032, some M6, some who God knows what else in there. So maybe the trick is just getting all the right hardware and everything. But speed nuts will make it easier to install the sub and everything. And I guess the other thing I should do, because this is all just raw metal for the time being, I should probably give that a quick coat of paint before I set it in there permanently. Okay, so I skipped a couple steps here just because fit up was proven to be quite a bit of a bitch. Getting the sub in back here, but I'm actually pretty happy with how this is coming out here. I've got it mounted on the bracket. You can see the tiniest little bit through that little gap. We'll get to that detail in a second. And I got it all trimmed around the speaker, kind of tucked it, and it actually tucks around it kind of nice. And because it's got the plastic backer, it holds itself in place. So I think if I throw the associated clips that are needed to keep that from moving anywhere, that should be fine as is. I'm a little annoyed that there's the exposed fasteners, but there's a trim grill there, and if I throw it on, you still see the fasteners through it. So I don't think there's much winning there, aside from maybe swapping out all those screws to flatheads or something, because right now they're just panhead Phillips, and flatheads might sit a little flush in there. Probably should have longer screws anyways to hold those in place. Alright, so subwoofer's now installed. There's actually a ton of stuff to do up front. We've got all the door speakers, the tweeters, crossovers, and I still have to finish wiring like the amplifiers and such. But I've already kind of looked through the footage that I took for the interior, and this is going to be a packed episode. So I'm going to cut it here, and we're going to pick up next time and get the rest of this all done. So, you know, all the usual stuff, guys. If you like this, thumbs up, comments, all that activity to make sure that the algorithm knows I'm doing at least something here. Maybe, kind of, sort of, I hope. And otherwise, I'll catch you guys all next time.